to get this started. I get to give 1 minute introduction to say, I'm not here just because we have a beautiful report and a cool film and a great room with so many folks here. 21 years ago, I was a stay-at-home dad. My partner was the breadwinner. No. We do too much of that. Don't clap for men doing the thing that should be obvious. My wife is from Brazil. She reminded me Brazil has 5 months paid maternity leave. She gave birth in the US, where we have 0 days paid maternity or paternity leave. At 6 weeks, she was back to work, one of the hardest days of her life. She said, "This is with you." I wish I could say that I was carrying some feminist flag to say this is what men need to be doing, but anyone who cares for a young child knows you have no hands to do anything else, to carry a flag or anything. In fact, you often have, I'm guessing you may share this idea with me, that you often fantasize about growing additional arms. And so I'm here because there's now a 21-year-old in the world, and Promundo is 21 years as well. It is not coincidentally that we started Promundo that very same year to say we need men and boys for gender equality. And a key pillar of that is this, unpaid care work. It is forgotten, it's not counted, it doesn't look like the sexy thing about gender equality, but we believe, and this report is framed in the fact that if we don't take care of unpaid care work, we don't achieve the equality that women deserve and the lives that we hope for and strive for our families. So with that, I get to hand this over to our moderator.
I'm going to hand it over to our minister.
Oh, yes, sorry about that. I knew that.
You knew that.
Okay. I knew that.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the promotion. In particular, I'll have to change my cards for anybody who's looking for those afterwards. Merci beaucoup et bienvenue au Canada. And I'd just like to note that before we begin, to acknowledge that we're here today on the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. As a father, I can say that a lot of conversation around here over the last couple of days have centered on questions of identity and what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a feminist. For me personally, being a father is probably the most important identity that I have. And what I'd like to share with you, as I'm not going to read my notes, what I'd like to share with you is when I started my career, I had a fantastic opportunity to work in the extension of Canada's regime for parental benefits. It's what I did as a member of what was then called the Human Resources and Development Department. The path towards achieving equal care is a long one. Canada's very first maternity legislation actually took place in British Columbia in 1921. So 98 years ago was the first piece of legislation that made it legal, or actually required employers not to fire women for having children for 6 weeks. So 6 weeks leave, not paid, but 6 weeks of leave. And interestingly, in 1921, after that, the legislation also obliged employers to allow for nursing time in the workplace. So incredibly advanced for 1921. But it takes a long time to get to where you have to get to. As women entered the labor market, of course, that's what really pushed the change. 1971, Canada, as a part of its unemployment insurance program, introduced maternity leave, paid maternity leave. This was extended in the 1980s. But one of the critical things that took place, and this was getting back to where I started this story, where I had the good fortune to be a part of something called Canada's National Children's Agenda, was the recognition in the late 1990s that A, 6 months was not enough, that it needed to be a year, and that it didn't just need to be a year of extending traditional maternity benefits, it needed to be changed to parental benefits. And the reason for that was twofold. On the one hand, and it's a story that comes out extremely well in the report on the State of the World's Fathers, is the importance to gender equality of men playing a more important role in the lives and the upbringing of their children. But it's also critically important to the life of the child. And the evidence and data that we were building our arguments on then had everything to do about that critical first year in the life of a child being home with a parent. Yes, breastfeeding, critically important. That was not something I could help as much with as I would have wanted to. However, being at home with a parent who took care of them 24 hours a day, was there with them when they needed any of their needs met, was critically important, and we had the data to prove that it meant later in life that child had better outcomes. And so the extension of parental benefits was a twofold agenda. One of freeing women to make choices, because it was a choice. Parents as a team could choose how they would divide up their benefits. But all of it as well was in the interests of the child. And I had the good fortune, so that I think was 1999 or the year 2000. So I had my first child in 2001. And I took, with my wife, we made the decision that we would split it 50-50. And I took the 6 months with my child. And for those of you who are not from Canada, I had the very unlucky fortune to end up with the winter months. Which meant, for any of you who's ever had a child who will not sleep, and the only way they'll sleep is in their stroller or something, pushing through the snow. And so I figured the next time I would be smarter, because we had already discussed the fact that we would split it again, because that worked out perfectly for us as a family. And no, same thing. Did it again. I ended up with November to March or April, and it was the most important, those 2 6-month periods. Those are the 12 months taken together, the most important year of my life. It was an experience that is difficult for any new parent to convey, even though it's one of the most natural experiences in the world. Unfortunately, for a lot of men, it's not natural enough. And it's something that we, and through reports such as this, are critically important to encouraging more and more men to take up those responsibilities, but also to encouraging governments, like the Canadian government, who has worked hard to move forward, to put in place the type of parental regimes that encourage fathers to do this. And most recently, and as I said, it's a long process. I started in 1921. It's not finished yet. Our regime is not perfect, we know that. But the present government made a change last year, as a matter of fact, of a use it or lose it element to the parental regime, where to encourage dads, use an extra 5 weeks of paid leave if it's shared. If you decide to share, you will get an extra 5 weeks. So it's meant as an incentive system for dads to do more. And it's only just gone into place. Hopefully we'll have data in a few years to see whether it worked. And speaking of data, very, very pleased to work directly with Promundo to aid them in collecting the data, because the data, of course, is what all of us need in order to make our arguments, whether it's you and your countries when you go home, but it's also for a country like Canada that needs to continue to work to build the regimes that are necessary to both achieve gender equality results, but also to create a better life for our children. So with that, I'm going to actually sign off and turn it back over and allow you to continue on with your panel.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'm Liz Ford, and I'm the Deputy Editor of the Guardian's Global Development section in London. So I focus a lot on women's rights and gender equality issues, so I'm really interested in hearing what the panelists say about this. This is a really fascinating topic. I'm also quite excited about the fact that I've got one of these really cool mics. But I'm going to go around. And also, if I knock it, you can't hear me, please flag and shout. Anyway, without further ado, I would like to introduce the Executive Director of UN Women, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, who's going to give us some key opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Liz. Thank you so much, also Gary, for your remarks, and Deputy Minister for your remarks, and Unilever and all other partners who are part of this wonderful piece of work. Congratulations. I want to thank you for making it possible in my lifetime to come to a women's conference and have a side event with so many people on this subject. When in the many years that I've been in the women's movement, this wasn't the case. So this is probably just one example that shows that we're getting somewhere. So congratulations for making it happen in my lifetime. The session is critical for us as UN Women because we took a conscious decision as UN Women to bring men and boys into our lives. It took us a long time to get there. We took a conscious decision to ensure that we will support initiatives that are focusing on engaging men and boys, and we inserted ourselves into the discourse and made sure that we create the spaces also for men to work with us closely as UN Women. And I remember some of my colleagues asking me, "You are UN Women, what is this thing with men now? You're really messing up the script." But on days like this, you just feel this has been the right decision, and we just took too long to get there. And our work, and I think probably for many of the people in the room, is anchored also in the belief that in order for us to transform the unequal power relations between men and women, we have to bring all of us in the same room to have the discussion and the debate, to exchange the experiences, and to call each other out. It is also important to ensure that to the extent that men are protagonists in this journey, we need to be there in order to shape the script and to make sure that it is not about treating them as heroes in the script, because we don't want to praise the fishes for swimming, but we just want to make sure that the fish is swimming. That's all. Men and boys and fathers in particular are critical for breaking the social norms and gender stereotypes because they are such powerful role models to all of us when we're young and even when we are older. There is this relationship and the bonds that we develop with our fathers, with our parents, that if it works well, it is really good. And if it's bad, it is really bad. The worst of which is when children are with parents and fathers that abuse them in every way, physically, psychologically, and the worst of all, sexually. So creating these kinds of spaces where, in addition, we're able to get data and evidence that shapes our thinking and the next steps that we need to take forward inform our evidence base is again important for many of us who are practitioners. Patriarchy and patriarchal society tells men to behave in a particular way and make the privileges that they have not to be so obvious, because in general, privilege is usually not obvious to those people who have it, especially if they have not earned it. And I think it is in these spaces that we begin to turn this mirror around and make sure that we create a possibility for these privileges to be questioned. If we were talking about class, what we will be wanting to do in spaces like this is to have a lot of men committing class suicide. I mean, not die. But taking a stand where they just give away these privileges in the best interest of society and for their own sanity and comfort. Because for many good men, this burden is actually very heavy. Because this is not always something that they want for themselves, and this is not something that they want for society. But too many do not even recognize that they have this privilege. One of the important lessons and takeaways that I think we have to repeat over and over again in these spaces is the importance of not having men who are bystanders. Because as Mandela would say, when good men do nothing, it is a conspiracy against women. And part of what we would like people to take away from these engagements is the importance of being engaged, of getting in there, see something, do something, say something, because if people do not respond in a locker room when there are debates and discussions about women that are sexist, they allow that kind of thinking and trends to be perpetuated. Unfortunately, we still have these stereotypes much stronger in our society than the laws that we pass to change the reality of men and women. And that is why we actually need to organize initiatives such as the Unstereotype Alliance, which we have with Unilever and many other companies, where we are actually trying to normalize society by showing them that the stereotypes that they are perpetuating are actually not the way society should be. In the advertising industry, there has been evidence that shows that the majority of people in society, men and women, do not like the stereotypes that perpetuate gender inequality, that it is good business to unstereotype in order to provide the good role models and to reinforce the good norms. So what we are looking for from the fathers that I'm sure we'll hear about is the change in our generation where it is going to be the men who will say, I will actually not marry a child. I'm just out of this thing, and lead from the front. We want a generation where men and boys will be able to say, I will be caught dead assaulting a woman. This is not going to be me. We want a generation of men who will be the ones that are standing outside courts with placards when a woman has to go to court and if she is alone because she is a victim of a GBV crime. It should not be groups of women activists standing there supporting her. It should be groups of men standing there and taking a stand and providing pro bono legal services to the women. We also want to see men, because in our work in he for she, where we try to engage especially men with power, most of them white males, to use that power to accelerate change, so that women are not spending years and years standing out of the door, knocking, breaking glass ceiling, when someone is sitting inside with the capacity and the possibility to make this go away much quicker. We try to help them to have the tools and to strengthen the conviction for them to do this, so that we, in spaces like this, are able to increase the number of men who say, dead under my watch will a woman not be paid what is due to her, because the extent to which unequal pay is still rampant in our society just tells us that there's just too many leaders, men, employers who don't get it, or if they get it, they just think that, you know, it's not a big deal. Just be happy that you have a job. That is not good enough for most women, and of course it is a significant violation of our rights. And of course, we want to make sure that in the next generation, all of these ills will not revisit our young people. And the lovely thing about being in this conference is just the number of young women and young men who are saying, hell no. Hell no. So we need to make sure that we support them, to make sure that the next generation will not have the same experience. Next year, when we mark 25 years of the adoption of the Beijing platform, we are trying very hard to make sure that we create the biggest platform space for the young people to take the baton. The kind of messages and the visuals we want to send is that this is about time that we have a completely new generation and values that will make sure that from now onwards, the pendulum will go just the one way. She's flagging the tagline for Beijing 25 celebration, generation equality. This is what it's all about. And generation equality means that good fatherhood will be a norm, not an exception. Thank you.
Now invite invite Gary back up and also Brian Heilman, who's a Senior Research Officer at Promundo, to present some key findings of their Save the World Fathers report. They've only got a short amount of time. I said it's a slight warning, but also as a kind of, there's plenty more in there, so please grab a copy.
All right, we will try to make it snappy. I'm thrilled to get to step into the data here, but I do want to say thank you very much, Assistant Deputy Minister, Executive Director. We come as fish to share this data, and I think it is important to acknowledge this platform is here because women's rights activists brought unpaid care to the table many years ago. So this is, we hold it up to be reviewed and scrutinized by you. So really, we're deeply thankful for that, and that's why it's here. Promundo believes in using data to drive change. We believe in making data great again. And I'm pleased that we get to share a lot of it. Brian has been the data Sherpa for all of this, if he allows me to use that term. And I just want to share kind of what's in this. We won't get to go through all of it, but just very quickly, we have new data that Planned Canada helped us pull together. We have the Helping Dads Care research project that we did together with Unilever, Dove, Men Plus Care. We have our own data that we've carried out with a number of partners from the International Men and Gender Equality Survey. And OECD also was kind enough to share with us data sets that they had not published and that we got to use. I mentioned very quickly all the other folks who were involved in this. I do want to call out the steering committee or the editorial advisory group that put this together, make sure I get everybody there. Plan, Oxfam, Dove, Men Plus Care, Unilever, Men Engage, Sonke, Rutgers, Save the Children. This was, if our message is it takes a village to raise and involve fathers, it took a village to get this report to you. So with that, let me jump into a couple of data points. We are framed by and inspired by, everybody now knows this number and should be outraged by it. We know the World Economic Forum number that says at the current rate of change, women's full equality in the workplace will only happen in 202 years. If we ask women around the world what is the main barrier to their participation in the workplace in the full amount they would like to, the answer is often and overwhelmingly unpaid care. And who doesn't? We start with a fairly sobering number that globally women are doing 3.3 times the amount of the daily care work. Some countries that's 10 times the amount. No country in the world has achieved full equality. Sweden comes close at 1.25-ish. But no country has achieved equality. Moreover, no country that we've found, we'd love to be corrected, has actually put a policy goal that they think men and boys could do 50% of the care work. That is where we're trying to operate from. This is data from ILO, the latest we have on time use. Men will often say, yeah, but I work outside the home in greater numbers. No matter where we look, as we add it up, on average, adding paid work and unpaid care work, women work more than us men, on an average of 30 minutes to an hour every single day. Now, if you get out your smartphone and you multiply a number in the middle there, let's make an average of 45 minutes, and you multiply that times 365 days, and you then do a calculation, what does that come to? That comes to about 10 days to 2 weeks, free vacation, Netflix binge watching, whatever you want to do with your time that we get as men. That is a pillar of patriarchy, it's a pillar of inequality. And as we've asked in our research, what is it that keeps families from doing this in more equal ways? What is it that keeps men from being able to use leave? Frequently the decision is financial. Men's average incomes being 20% higher for the same work, families make every single day conscious decisions to say, she'll take more time off, hers will be part-time work, and men continue to work often more hours. And we climb in the chain, we continue to work more as men, and women's wages and unpaid care work stays sticky. Next one. If we have that sobering moment of where we started inequality, we also have the good news, and this is from our Helping Dads Care data, that men want to do this. We are not pushing men to do something that is against our nature. We are born and we thrive on care. We as men are biologically wired for it as women are, with some biological differences, but we also pulse and can connect, and contrary to popular belief, we can love and care for children and others. The powerful piece of data that we have there, hold on, is that across the countries we looked at, 85% of men said they would do anything to be involved in the care of their young or newly adopted child. This is something that men want to do, and that's part of the issue that we want to hold up. So where are we? And then I get to turn over to Brian if you'll pull up the next one now. Thanks. Another piece of sobering data is that over the last 3 decades, using ILO data across middle-income and upper-income countries where there has been some more progress on gender equality, men have increased their time use in unpaid care by a whopping 7 minutes. Not exactly something that, the fish, I would say, are not even swimming, frankly, if we want to use your metaphor, if you allow me. That's the stuckness that we're trying to get at, and that's where this report takes off. And I'll share with you at the end an action plan that we want all of you to be part of. With that, I get to hand it over to Brian.
Thank you so much, Gary, and thank you everyone for being here. As Gary said, I'm kind of one of a team of authors that had access to all of the quantitative numbers that we're about to see here and the qualitative insights as well. But really, one of the joys of being a researcher in this topic and the topics, so many of the topics that we're discussing at Women Deliver, is that it's not just some distant academic topic. This is all of our everyday lives and realities. We know that we all do care work, domestic work on a daily basis. We all need it to thrive. And so as I walk us through all of the evidence in the report, I guess I'll just call on you to keep your personal life and your connection to this topic in mind, because it's not just evidence, it's our everyday lives. And if you'll permit me just one dad joke, the State of the World's Fathers report, you can't say bar charts without hearts. Pretty bad, okay. So the State of the World's Fathers 2019 takes a structural view to the issue of unpaid care work, and that's what I mean by that is we know that there is no single story or simple solution that will achieve equality in care between men and women. We need all of these changes happening simultaneously. We need to improve our laws and policies. We need to transform social and gender norms. We need to build the economic and physical security of all families. We need to look to the couple level, help couples and co-parents thrive together. And then fifth and finally, we need individual fathers to put that care into action. And as you can see, the way this graphic is laid out, those keys map onto levels of society. So we're looking from the broadest policy level, step by step down to the reality of that individual father. And I'm going to just walk us through these five keys very, very quickly. But as Gary said, the full details are available for you in the report. So key number one is to improve laws and policies. So if you'll indulge a quick show of hands, how many people in the room were able to take advantage of a nationally provided paid parental leave policy at the birth or adoption of a child? Okay, great. A scattering of hands, certainly not the majority, and there might be very many people here who are not parents, and that's certainly fine. But the first thing I'll show is a map of the world. And you can see the scattered reality from this room is reflected by the map as well. What we see here is, according to World Bank data, the number of supportive policies in place for new parents, from absolutely no policies in the darkest blue to the most maximum number in the darkest green. You see a scattered picture, and we fortunately can't point to many countries where there are simply no supportive policies for new parents. But the ideal world, of course, would be for all parents in this room to have that opportunity provided to them by their national government, and also to see a fully green map here. But parental leave, paternity leave, maternity leave, these are essential, but they're not the only kinds of laws and policies that we really need to see these transformations. So the report will also explore and call for, just imagine in your life, those of you who are or have raised children, what it would have meant to have universally available, free, very high quality childcare provided in your location. What impact would have that made on your life and your children's lives? As Gary mentioned, what if we were able to point to high level commitments at a national level or at an international level that specifically called for men to take on a full equality and 50% of care work? Social protection policies as well, and by that we're talking about cash transfers, old age pensions, disability grants, and all of those services, income and services for the poorest families. Promundo has undertaken an analysis of 100 such social protection policies and found that only 4 had anything built into them whatsoever that was working to engage men in care work. But of course we know laws and policies are not the only thing that are essential toward this. There are those persistent social and gender norms that are also a major barrier to this work. It is still far, far too common that domestic work, care for children, care for elderly family members is expected socially to be the responsibility of women. What you're looking at are data from our images study in nearly 20 countries, I think here, and as you can see in all but a few locations, vast majority of men agreed with the idea that changing diapers, giving baths to children, and feeding children are the mother's responsibility. So these attitudes are not a thing of the past. These attitudes are alive and well, and we see that those attitudes continue to translate into pervasive norms. So we see from UNICEF data that girl children still, in terms of their actual time use and behavior, spend 40% more time daily on unpaid work than boys of the same age. So those attitudes translate into persistent norms. Now there are some small stories of success. We are able to demonstrate that when parent training courses are designed such that they specifically engage parents of all genders, and that they take a gender transformative approach, meaning that they directly address those harmful attitudes, we've been able to see some positive changes. So for instance, Promundo's Program P, when implemented and evaluated in a rigorous trial in Rwanda, was able to demonstrate that men who participated with their female partners in that course significantly decreased their perpetration of intimate partner violence and increased their daily time spent on domestic and care work in that study. That's one of many, many programs that we amplify in the report. Another that we're excited to talk about is the SHOW program undertaken by Plan International in many locations around the world. And we're so grateful that Plan International Canada partnered with us on this report and conducted interviews with participants in fathers clubs as well as their female partners and children in Bangladesh, Haiti, Ghana, and Nigeria. And so, just to give raise up some of their voices in this presentation as well, one Fathers Club member from Ghana told us, initially some friends of mine didn't understand the reason for my change and they tried to mock me. But I rather explained to them and they now understand the reason for the change, hence their support. So you can see that those social norms, those attitudes and pressures are proving a barrier even to participants in programs like this. Okay, so we made it through the first 2 keys, and a point to make here is that as we look at these levels of society and the keys, they don't exist in isolation from one another, right? So we also conducted an analysis of how laws and attitudes and norms interact with one another, and it's probably not surprising, but useful to be able to demonstrate that those locations that have the most supportive attitudes toward gender equal norms of care work and the most supportive laws and policies available, those are the countries where we see the highest rates of men taking on the care of domestic work.
Right, I'm just going to say for 1 minute.
Oh.
Yeah, some of the other key points up here.
Right.
Sorry.
Well,
there's reports are here and there's lots to...
Okay. Very quickly, this is like a good teaser then, like, stay tuned for the full report. You get the sense of the way the keys move. Number 3 is we know that all families don't have the same economic opportunities. We know that there are families facing conflict and displacement, and we have to bring particular attention to the implications on care work of those situations. We have data that speak to that. Then at the level of the couples, listen, give me just 1 second. The report collects quite a lot of research from around the world demonstrating gender equality outcomes and positive impacts for women when men take on a greater share of care work, but we wanted to get that information directly from the source. So we also collected data from women in all of the countries where we were undertaking our work, and we raised up their voices in the report as well. And so just a couple examples of those, and maybe this is a point I can conclude on if that's where we need to go. What would you do, we asked the partners of those Fathers Club participants, if you had 2 hours more time per day? I would get some free time. I would use that time to think about life. So this is just to say the report affirms that rest, relaxation, sleep, and thinking about life are women's rights, and we're here to uphold those rights. And what it's all about in the end, then, of course, is to put that individual father's care into action. So, really, that's what I'll leave you with, and apologies if I've run long, is that vision and that thought, and hopefully you can see your own realities reflected in that, of a world where all these levels of society are transformed to be advancing equality in care and domestic work to really help our families and societies thrive. Thank you so much for your
There's so much there. Thank you so much for sharing. I'd like to thank our speakers for this bit, and I'll ask you if you wouldn't mind to give a round of applause if you'd like to take a seat. And I'm going to ask Yousafzai to come up. He's the co-founder of the Malala Fund, as if he needs an introduction. Just over our way, please.
Hello, thank you so much. Thank you. And it's an honor that I'm here at the launch of the State of the World's Fathers report. And you know, I'm being known as a daughter's father. Once Malala was my daughter, and now I'm her father. Thank you. I think fatherhood is an everyday effort. And to be very short about my family, my wife is here. Where are you, Torpekai? She's sitting. Thank you. We both, I want to just emphasize the importance of family. We both grew up in a patriarchal family. And what we did consciously to create and build an egalitarian family. And I think that two things of the report about the family, that this family institution is such a powerful platform that we can bring great change through this institution. I remember that, like, I'm also the father of two sons. And my older son, who is right now doing his A-levels exams, sometimes he stands beside me and tells me, I'm taller than you. And I tell him, I want to see you taller in every way. And these days he's very stressed because of his final A-level exams. And this morning he called me and with a choked voice that you are doing a lot for me, and like I was unable to make you proud because my maths examination was so poor. And I told him, look, if I am loving you without condition, you should not be too much hard upon yourself. Let you be loved without conditions. So our children need a different of parenthood, fatherhood at different stages. I remember when Malala was accepted by Oxford, and just a week before she was leaving home to move to Oxford, we were sitting at the dining table and she was just very serious, asking me, you know, Abba, we say Daddy, Pashto. Abba, you know that now I had been in a girls' school all the time, all girls' school, and now I'm moving to Oxford and it's a mixed school, mixed college. And I'll be meeting with boys and I'll invite guests, there may be men in those guests. By the way, what do you think about it? And like a traditional father, I told her, I trust you. And you know what did she say? Don't trust me. And really, sometimes our children can fix us. But we should let a space to them. Most of the parents and fathers think, because fathers are, you see, special patriarchal fathers, they know that I have to fix every child. It simply doesn't work. So, I mean, there are a lot of things could be said about fatherhood. But one thing that I want to add, and that's so important, is education. Like, if you want this change in our communities, in our societies, we should work on the curriculums in schools. I personally think that if education does not impart the norm or the value of equality in our children, rest assured that there is something wrong with the quality of education. Education should, it should have the power to make our inner being fair, just and beautiful. Anyway, it was so nice to be here. Every day I try to be a good father, and you too. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Our next lot of panelists up to the stage. Would you like to come up and I'll introduce you then when you're up on the stage? Who is Child Rights and Positive Parenting Unit Manager at Sonke Gender Justice and the MenCare Global Coordinator. We've got Amy Albrechtsen, who is the CEO of Plan International, and Lauren Mlambo, who is the Principal Advisor for the Gender and Development section of UNICEF, and Alan Jope, who is the CEO of Unilever. So welcome, thank you very much for coming along. So I've got a few questions here, and then as we go along, there will be an opportunity to maybe take a couple of questions, so keep thinking, and then hopefully we'll have more time for that. Vessel, I'm going to turn to you first, and I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about MenCare and what it means, and what is the value added to have a global fatherhood campaign.
Thank you, Liz. So it's such a wonderful opportunity to be here, and congratulations to the team. It's a fantastic publication. So MenCare is a global fatherhood campaign launched by Sonke and Promundo and Sonke in 2011, and it has grown to be active in more than 55 countries currently. And it's fantastic to see how passionate the partners are in these countries about implementing MenCare. The reason that these partners are so passionate is because MenCare offers a personal political opportunity to the implementers. It narrows gender equality down to not who is talking about the work, but who is doing the work. And when I wash my daughter's hair, and I understand why she prefers the Spider-Man shampoo to the frozen shampoo, it is a political action. It is political because it busts the myth that the only thing that women have to offer the world is motherhood. It busts that myth. I want my daughter to live in a world where she can give everything that she has to offer. And that is so much more than motherhood. I want my son to support that world. And that's the opportunity that MenCare offers. Thank you.
And Amy, I'm going to come to you. Obviously, this was mentioned earlier about different stages of parenting, and I just wondered, we talk a lot about men's involvement in children's earliest years, but what can you tell us about the role of men and parents, particularly in their roles as children become adolescents?
So let me first give a shout out to Promundo and to the report, and it's amazing, and it's been a great partnership, and Plan International obviously works with adolescents all over the world, but specifically, let me just draw out a few of the things that we've learned in this research that we've done together, and thanks to the Canadian government for funding that as well. Adolescent children, they first of all, they deeply, deeply, deeply value the role modeling that they have seen, and they're absolutely convinced that what they've learned and seen in their family, they will be able to build on and take that forward. So the role modeling for them is absolutely key. The other thing that we've seen in this research, and it's both encouraging, but it's also a bit scary, because almost pervasively they have said that they know that this engagement that their fathers have had has reduced the violence at home, and that's obviously positive, but it's also scary because it just calls out how much violence there is in families. But yes, male engagement definitely reduces violence. And the final thing that we've seen is that just the fact that dad is around and he's there and he understands changes the dynamics on a number of things. They feel that they can have more open conversations with dad, they can bring their real issues. It's not they only bring problems and that he needs to fix them, or that if they have problems he will either hit them over the head or tell them off. It's a much, much more equal relationship, etc. And I'd like to just draw out an interesting quote also from the research, which is, because dad was there and he was taking part in housework, and he actually also understands how much time it takes, what it costs, and now he's offering up more financial support also in the family. He's not just sort of, because he understands that it has an emotional cost, a time cost, and an actual monetary cost to run a family and to be at home. All that is really, really important.
Yes, please. Okay. All right. So obviously we've talked a lot about the norms that assume that it's a woman's role is the family caregiver. So how do we start early, or when do we need to start in actually addressing these, so that we set the stage for a more flourishing, gender equal future?
Thank you so much, Liz, and it's really great to be on this panel with so many important partners in our work across the public and private spheres. I think, as we saw from the data, we do need to intervene early. That data, and it was flashed over rather quickly, but it's incredibly powerful. We know that girls are spending over 160 million more hours than boys in unpaid household chores. What would it look like if we were to work with fathers and male caregivers to start redistributing those chores within the household, and role modeling, as some of my panelists have talked about, what it looks like to share the care burden of child rearing as well. And we can do that through positive parenting and caregiver support programs that show what it looks like to raise families in a violence-free household and where care is distributed equally. We can also work again at the bigger scale with public and private policies. And we're doing that in UNICEF together with UN Women and other agencies. On Parenting Day last week, we released an interagency statement on what we call family-friendly policies that we call on everybody in the private sector, in civil society and other UN agencies to take upon themselves, which is making the workplace more family-friendly and inclusive, not only because it's better for women and better for business, but ultimately better for children and generations to come. So what are these family-friendly policies? We have 5 points to it. We talk about parental leave with a minimum of 24 weeks, breastfeeding breaks and breastfeeding facilities so that women are able to exercise their choice in this area, childcare, subsidized childcare, and child grants or child support where needed, so that we can kind of break through those financial barriers that were presented so compellingly earlier on. And we, of course, need to make sure that those workplaces are violence-free, just like the homes where children are growing up. And we do need to intervene early, particularly in those critical moments after a child is born and in the early years. Why? Because this is a time of unprecedented brain growth. We know that it's exactly then that the brain is connecting 1,000 neurons a second. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really nurture, through nurturing care and caregiving, that kind of parenting from fathers, from mothers, from female and male caregivers, where we provide attachment, stimulus, adequate nutrition, and really raising our children in environments of love and care so that they can thrive and become productive citizens. And ultimately, that's smart economics, because human capital, or what we call the cognitive capital of children, becomes human capital, and ultimately the real driver of economies in the 21st century. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. To Alan, so what is Unilever's perspective on equality in care?
I think equality for women requires equality for men. We need access to paternity leave so that we can take up our share of unpaid care and domestic chores. Increasingly, business and business leaders are being asked to take positions on social issues. Unilever has a long history of that, and one of the issues that we're championing right now is the importance of paternity leave to reduce the burden on women of unpaid care. And so we're going to put our full shoulders against this. We've started with, as usual, trying to get our own house in order and putting in place a global policy around paternity leave. Actually, that's the easy bit, getting guys to take the paternity leave against the social pressures against it. That's the difficult bit. And I was once again inspired by hearing Phumzile talk about the importance of unstereotyping the world. And yes, advertising does have an impact on shaping social norms, and we will put 100% of our investment behind our Dove Men Plus Care brand. It's a big brand, we spend a lot of money against it. We'll put 100% of the effort in a way that shows modern depictions of masculinity, that shows men in caregiving roles, and that explicitly shows men caring for children. So I don't know how much that will contribute to the issue, but we're going to put all of our weight behind it.
So obviously you mentioned the MenCare. What actually in Unilever, is it about just sort of the advertising, the positive images, or is it a case of managers saying to a worker whose wife's about to have a baby or partner's about to have a baby, right, I don't want to see you back here for 6 months, something like that, being very kind of vocal about it?
It usually requires role modeling, so people need to see folks throughout the organisation setting an example. Words mean nothing, words are cheap, and so leadership behaviour, yes, of course, encouraging people, but until we have a sprinkling of people around the business who are role models for actually taking the leave that they're entitled to, then it's just so many words, and I'm happy to report we're starting to see that. So momentum is picking up, and let's be honest, what we're doing here is we're asking people to exercise their right to leave to care for their children, which they're dying to do. So I'm naturally an optimistic type of person, but I'm highly optimistic that we can get the ball rolling quickly on this one because it makes so much sense.
Lauren, I wanted just to pick up just with you. What do we, sort of policymakers and people that are setting up programs, what do they need to be thinking about to make sure that these messages get through at an early age, for example?
Well, I've talked a little bit about the family-friendly policies, and we're seeing really a growing momentum in this regard. What we need to do is increasingly invest, especially in the social protection area, which means a combination of what we are calling these days cash plus programs, providing cash directly to households, unrestricted, unconditional cash grants, coupled with service access and parenting and caregiver programs for young children, for adolescents, that really accompanies this alleviation of poverty modality with social norms change interventions that I know many around the panel here are heavily engaged in. So we want to see those social protection cash plus programs in humanitarian and developing contexts reflected in policy. We want to support public financing for these programs really take scale and impact on millions and millions of girls and women's lives. And we know when we do this, we see improved behavior change, reduced poverty, and overall improved happiness and well-being, decision-making, within the household for women and for the children themselves, as well as, of course, overall productivity. We're also seeing some really exciting movement in the parenting and caregiver programs. Evidence is telling us that when they are transformational, when they are feminist-inspired, that we can actually change behaviors in a very short space of time. Thank you.
Thank you. AB, obviously we've spoken about the men that are keen to do it, but actually changing them and actually getting them to take it up. We've talked about changing social norms. What about the resistance that sometimes comes up from women themselves?
So in this research that we've done together, and that Plan Canada has led on our part, we're not seeing any resistance whatsoever. I mean, we are seeing women really embracing that caregiver role. And you saw some of the quotes: "I have more time to think. My relationship with my husband has improved." All the positives have overwhelmingly come out of this report. So I think there may be a narrative also about what women want that may have been created by others than women, because certainly not the women that we've asked in this study have come forward with that. The other side of it, though, is that we see tremendous stigma by men against men. So there's a lot of pushback by men, and that stigma has to be removed. I actually have to retell a story that was told by the wonderful UN youth envoy Ziauddin last night at a panel that we did here. And she's been the UN youth envoy for now a few years, and she was newly wed when she got the job. And she's Sri Lankan, and her husband gave up his job to move with her to New York. And still now, 2 years later, he's still getting almost daily texts from friends in Sri Lanka that saying, "When are you going to stop washing the socks of your wife and come back home?" So, I mean, that kind of stigma and that type of harassment and bullying of men that actually take on this role obviously has to change, and that's why what Alan was saying and what Unilever is doing to change those stereotypes is so hugely important for everybody.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Ursula one last question, but before I do, I just want to say we've probably got time for maybe a couple of questions. And so I think there's going to be somebody with a microphone in front of you, who's going to stand in the middle here. So if, as Vessel is answering this question, give us some practical examples. If you want to just sort of come up and hang around the microphone, that would be fantastic. So Vessel, can you give us some examples about some of the programme that's happening in South Africa? Give us some practical examples.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I'm sure Executive Director Mlambo-Ngcuka and colleagues from South Africa would agree that the political discourse in South Africa is very vibrant. It was remarkable to sit in the Portfolio Committee in Parliament and see how all of the parties agree that improved parental leave in South Africa is necessary. And our President signed off on that in January of this year. It was really exciting. We've got better paid maternity leave, we've got leave that includes all sexual orientations and gender identity, and we have now 2 weeks of leave for fatherhood. A very practical application of the Program P intervention that Brian mentioned is work we're doing with social service professionals in South Africa to get them to understand how to better involve fathers in the cases that they deal with in family support. One final one is in the child support grant, which we have in South Africa, a social protection mechanism. From our State of South Africa's Fathers report, we discovered that fathers who access the child support grant, when they are registered as the primary caregivers, do not use the money any differently from mothers who access the same child support grant. According to an income dynamics survey, they use it on school fees, nutrition, clothing. And that's a really good sign of hope. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. It's a great way to end that little section. Okay, so there's some people lined up, great. If you could just maybe give us your name and what association you're representing, that'd be great.
Hello, my name is Karen Tischler. I'm the founder of Emily's Pass. I'm advocating for professionals' return to paid work after a long period of absence. I would like to congratulate you on this amazing report. And Alan, I would really congratulate you, Unilever in Germany, having a job-sharing vice president between 2 women, which is amazing. And at least one vice president in Canada is a stay-at-home mom who went back to work and is now a vice president. So I really appreciate that. My question is, what can we do to help returning professionals to return back to work after a long period of absence, because it is a very hidden part of the workforce? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take another one and then we'll put it to the panel and see.
Hi, I'm Yousafzai. I work for Rutgers and I have been campaigning for paternity leave in the Netherlands for quite some time. And what I experienced is that paternity leave in itself is very good, but that it should be taken by fathers after the mom is going back to work. So the solo care, really taking the solo responsibility. And I was just wondering if Gary or Wessel, could you tell me a bit more about the data that's in the report that support, because it's a personal experience as well, that not being the assistant of the mother anymore, but really taking out that full responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to the panel. And this idea of having a long period of absence, would anyone like to come on?
Not so much from a planned perspective, but more from experiential perspective. I think we have to, as we think about our organizations and as we look at the explicit and implicit gender biases that are in our policies. Most of our policies are based on this continuous progression in one's career. There's nothing that says, oh, I can take a top job now, then I can go back, I can go up, I can come back. The so-called lattice model where you move up and down. And if we can embed that in the thinking of our organizations rather than this upward progressive thought, then we can make more space for men and women to take, top parts of jobs or leadership roles or different kinds of roles at different times in their life. And that should make more space for those that have been outside the workforce for a while to come in at the right level and engage.
I think you have to answer the question, we should think about what we mean by the organisation. If you ask how many people work for Unilever, often we would reflexively answer about 160,000 because that's how many are on the payroll. But that excludes people. There's 3 million people come to work for Unilever every day. They're just not all on the payroll. And I think we're reaching the natural death of the traditional type of organisation structure that's defined by hierarchical layers, rigid boxes and lines. And we're increasingly experimenting with a way of working where we assemble the right talent to solve a problem or seize an opportunity, and when that task is finished, the group disbands and moves on to the next assignment. And that I will, for sure, we will start to think about not the 160,000 but the 3 million. And in that context, people who have got wonderful skills but may have stepped out the workforce for a long period of time, that dynamic of an organisation will make it much easier for people to re-enter and contribute on their terms rather than trying to force their way into a really rigid structure and hierarchy. So that's how we're thinking about this challenge.
The solo care issue?
Yeah.
Ilza, thanks for asking that question, and I should mention that Ilza is one of the co-authors of the report, so not only a good question. One of the things we found in the data is men's sense of limited competence in hands-on care work. Both men think we're not very competent at care work, and oftentimes mothers don't think we're very competent caregivers either. The data is quite clear about that pretty much everywhere we look. One of the ways that we help men become competent is hands-on experience doing it. We can certainly do that in childhood, but it makes a lot of difference that in the early days and the early weeks of a child's life, in the case of a newborn, that we as men have the possibility for that hands-on care. In some parts of the world, that does make sense that men need to be off on their own and get good at it. In other parts where we're much more collective and households have blended families, that may be doing it by myself, but with others around me. We also know that in the 1,000 days that Lauren brought up, that skin-to-skin contact between fathers and babies and mothers and babies is an integral part of social, emotional, physical development, and also facilitates a lifelong bond between all caregivers and young children. So clearly we need women to be part of this. You often look at us as not very competent caregivers. This is not at all blaming you for the fact that we don't do the work, but this is to say we're in this together, and having the chance that we as men, we as boys learn how to care for young children should be considered as fundamental a thing we learn as fill in the blank, mathematics, learning how to read, etc. So thank you, Phumzile, for bringing that question up.
I think we've got time for just one more question, quick question.
Hi, my name's Tara Cookson. I'm co-founder of a research consultancy called Ladysmith. Gary, you raised a really interesting point about the link between men's weaker uptake of paternity leave and the gender pay gap. And so my question actually then is for Alan. What are you and your private sector colleagues doing to leverage pay equity for change in this particular area?
We've recently published our gender pay gap information in the UK, and we do indeed have a gender pay gap, which is that women in Unilever on average earn 2.5% more than men. But it's a lie, because what is actually happening is there's a significant raft of men doing factory work, poorly paid factory work, and therefore when we look at it on a job-to-job comparison, it is still disadvantageous for women. And so I hope by being transparent, you'll believe me that we're taking action on this, and we're going through work level by work level, position by position, where can we spot inequity. And actually the specific thing we've done is we've stopped doing blanket pay increases, and 100% of pay increases in Unilever now are targeted, and we use gender equality as a particularly important way of targeting pay increases.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that's almost all we have time for from the panel, but I want to ask just one, as it just goes, one sort of 5-word answer. What is needed going forward to promote equality in care?
Oh, geez, thanks. I'm not going to answer your question. I'm just going to say I often get asked, what regrets do you have in life? And I struggle, actually. I always look forward. I don't have many regrets, but I regret that I didn't take paternity leave when my kids were born.
I think it's translating this value of feminism is freedom for everyone into all realms, whether it's the home, the workplace, or in public policy making. Thank you.
I think for me it's more power to the Unstereotype Alliance, building a much different narrative about the role of girls, boys, everywhere in the world, and including when they get a little bit older.
If we can get 50 governments to sign up to the 50-50 pledge, that would be a catalyst to activating intergenerational transfer of care between parents and children.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your panelists. We'll give a round of applause, and then Gary will give us
If I could get you to go back to the slide with our commitment there. What we want to leave you with is an action plan. We've got 5 points that are in the report, but you'll have to wait until the closing plenary today at 4:30 before we give you those, or you can reach page 17 in the report. But we are launching today with Women Deliver, and if you'll allow me to channel Katia Iverson, when we asked her, hey, would Women Deliver sign on to this thing called the MenCare commitment, she said, well, if women are to deliver, men need to care. So please credit Katia for that, tweet that. And with that, we're pleased to say what we're carrying forward with the report this time is this simple pledge. We need governments, as Vessel just said, to sign on to a goal of men doing 50% of this. No countries so far have. We will be hounding you and working with you to try to figure out how we get governments to sign on that. If we can set as a goal, we believe we can achieve progress on it. And the other one is what individual men need to do and need to be supported to do, and that's the 50 minutes part. If you look at the middle income and upper income countries around the world, and the gap, if men did 50 minutes more per day, and women did now that's a big supposition, that women would do 50 minutes less per day as we do 50 minutes more, we achieve something close to equal. In the whole world, that would be a huge move forward in terms of men organizing our lives to be more devoted and connected to caregiving. So we're putting out there this 50-minute pledge. Part of that, at the same time, we're thrilled to launch with Unilever the Paternity Leave Corporate Task Force, bringing together workplaces. Women Deliver is also part of that, Promundo is part of that, and some other corporations are joining on to say we make workplaces more equitable as we support men and offer paternity leave. That's what we want you to take ahead. Make it yours, give us ideas, please reach out to us. And I get to do one final thing because, again, we didn't do this together. I want to put the slide that's got everyone involved, if you would do that. Long list of authors: Nikki, Brian, Tavishi, Che, Shireen, and me, Jennifer, Cassandra, and Ilza. Thanks all of you for the work on it. And if I could ask the Promundo comms and program team to stand up, because you guys did a fantastic job on this. I also want to thank the many funding partners for this as well. Global Affairs Canada, CETA, Oak Foundation, the Government of Iceland, Dove, Plus Care, Unilever. I probably missed somebody. Did I get it all, Alexa? I think that's it. Thanks all for the support on this. Please take the commitment, make it yours, give us ideas, and join us in being the fish who are doing what we should be doing, which is swimming toward equality. Thanks very much.